Welcome everyone to CEO School. Today we have one of our very, very special guests, Debbie Ternes. She's been on before and we've absorbed so much from her over each of our sessions that I just had to bring her back again. Deb is a seasoned confidence coach, a master certified fearless living coach, speaker, and mentor for over 16 years. And she is the co-founder of Authentic Friendships, which is a community for women. Deb's clients build their confidence, realize new possibilities, and have powerful transformations that impact their relationships, careers, and lives. And I will have to say, if you've listened to any of our previous conversations, you know this to be true. She comes with the goods. She doesn't hold anything back in our conversations, and I absolutely love that about her. So welcome, Debbie.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm so happy to be here again, and thank you for the invitation.
So first thing I want to ask is, what have you been up to over the last few months since the last time we talked?
Well, I have created a new offering. I'm doing what I call In the Office Together. It's a virtual co-working. So we've got a couple of blocks of hours that we could sit on Zoom and work virtually, creating kind of the office experience, which so many of us need for more accountability when we work from home. It gets kind of lonely being in our four walls all alone, right? Been doing. Sorry,
I was just going to say, there's a motivation to knowing that you are there with other people, and yeah,
like the camaraderie and the commonality and the community piece of it too, right? And it's kind of nice knowing, oh my gosh, I get to see my ladies again, right? And to be in the space together and to be able to share and swap ideas, right? Because again, we all have great ideas while we're sitting in our four walls. And it's not until we seek out the wisdom, the advice, the experience of other people who have tried different things, maybe even the same thing, to help guide us to do things differently, or maybe just even to affirm that we're on the right track. So that's all fun.
Absolutely. Well, I love that. That is fantastic. Now I want to tell everybody that Deb and I were talking a couple of days ago, and she brought up renegotiating your agreements with people. And I just was, I knew that we had to talk about that on CEO School. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about, how do you renegotiate an agreement that you might have, and do that without a lot of people. And I'm going to say, I think in a lot of ways, particularly women, tend to not want to let anyone down. And so they sometimes avoid the conversation because they simply don't want to, to disappoint anyone. So, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dynamics that go into like the renegotiating process. And I talk a lot about that when I talk about accountability, and when I work with my clients and with groups, when we're talking about accountability, because there are times that we make commitments and agreements or set goals for ourselves. And at some point in the process, we realize it's not going to happen. We need to do something different because it's not in alignment with what we really want to do or get done. But it takes courage to stand up and say, excuse me, I'm not going to make the deadline. This isn't going to work for me. And to your point, Kelly, like, there's so many of us who don't want to disappoint, right? So then we scramble to actually force ourselves to make something happen when it's not in alignment, when we compromise our health, our well-being, our other relationships with our family, our kids, our partners, all of those different things to try to make that happen. And that, as you said in my bio, right, I'm a fearless living coach, right? It's all about the fear that drives us there. We don't do our best work when we're doing it out of fear. And so really working to build your confidence in having those conversations, opening up the dialogue to talk about what's not going to work. I like to tell people to have at least 2 solutions already prepared before you go into the conversation. And what that does is it demonstrates that you put thought into it. You have been doing some troubleshooting, some decision making, and creating a different possibility. Now, the really great thing about having the conversations when you're renegotiating with somebody, yes, it can be scary. You may not get the answer you want. You may still have to do it. All of those are possible, right? But the other possibility is maybe the deadline you set really isn't necessary. Maybe you actually do have more time. And it could be the person that you've made that agreement with has a much better solution than you could have ever even imagined that serves the purpose of not only you and the agreement that you made, but maybe for the greater good as well. And so it really is about being able to, admit that it might not be working. There's, maybe there's some shame involved. Maybe there's I overcommitted and that's embarrassing, right? Or the fear of not looking competent, right? The fear of, they're going to think I'm a loser. They're not going to trust me anymore. They're not going to work with me anymore. I'm going to lose clients. I'm going to lose customers. I'm going to lose, all of those things go on. But it's when we have the courage to stand up and be authentic, and when we can be vulnerable and transparent, that is where trust starts being built. And that's where the confidence, not only in yourself, but in the people that you're working with and for, they start having more trust and confidence in you because you are being honest. And people love that. What do they say? People buy from people they like, trust, and I know there's a third one.
Like, know, and trust.
Like, know, and trust. Yeah.
Absolutely. But trust is a huge part of it. And that takes time, and you need to demonstrate that. So you're absolutely right. I love that. And so often we keep thinking, if we need to renegotiate an agreement, if we need to do something like that, I'll just, you don't want to go in early because maybe I can still do it. If I work weekends, if I, work till midnight, if I do the things, maybe I can still make it happen. But you hit the nail on the head in 2 ways. One is if you talk to people sooner versus later, then you give yourself time to actually follow through on whatever the new line of negotiation is. You're not right up against the deadline. But the second is, which you talked about earlier, is you don't then damage, possibly in a small way, possibly in a larger way, your relationships with your other clients, with your family members, with your community members, all of that, because you are, if you've overcommitted, you've probably even if it's only in one thing, by focusing all your attention on that one thing, you then let down other people down the chain. And that happens all the time.
It does. And the really great thing when you start, here's the thing that happens when I say to people, when I'm teaching about accountability, people say, oh my gosh, I never even really thought about that as an option, right? People avoid, like you said, they overwork rather than just really having the conversation and building the trust. And you're absolutely right, Kelly, like the demonstration when, and I specifically speak like when you're like talking about in work groups and stuff too, right? When you demonstrate what it looks like to do these things, it gives other people courage to do the same thing. And it just multiplies, right? And so then your team starts trusting each other even more they start asking more questions. I mean, let's just say you're a person who overcommits consistently, right? And let's say the one time you have the courage to say, I got to renegotiate this, right? So now your team members are witnessing you standing up for your, showing up for yourself, being responsible to the team, and they're going to start asking the questions when you make your next commitment, right? Okay, great. Have you thought about this? Are you sure about that date? Do you want to extend it a little bit more, right? And that, again, it builds the trust and the confidence and really makes the team a lot more cohesive, because now they feel safe asking the questions. They don't feel attacked. They feel more comfortable, right? It is all about the accountability and the trust and the confidence. It's all of those three things wrapped up. But you got to have the courage to do it, and you got to take the risk.
And that's, yeah, I was going to say, and it is a risk, or it feels like a risk. But I will also say that people, in my experience, really appreciate you being straightforward with them more than they do if you manage to slide into home at the 11th hour, you know, because as you said earlier, that's not your best work. It never is. I mean, yeah. So I think we sometimes don't appreciate the grace that others will give us if we are forthright with them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it takes practice, because it can be scary, you know, and depending on your past experiences, it may be something that you're hesitant to do. But I really want to encourage you. You can even start where it's safe to do it, right? Renegotiating a lunch date, or renegotiating what time dinner is going to be ready. I mean, you can start with some super simple things that are safe and continue practicing and stretching farther and farther, because it really will benefit you in the end. I absolutely promise that.
I'm going to throw out something else you can practice with, and maybe you can address this. I have a group of super high achievers in a mastermind group for my goal setting class. And they set, and they set lofty goals for themselves. But they are also, like all of us, they have multiple priorities. They could be sick children or husbands, or it could be, again, other clients or other projects that they're working on. And I see again and again that the person they need to renegotiate with is themselves. and and I try to give them permission to do that when it's appropriate, because even though I'm there to keep them accountable, it needs to be realistic. And renegotiating with yourself, in some ways, I think it's harder for a high achiever, but I also think that that's a place that you can really practice and start to understand the process, understand that it's not quitting, understand that you're not failing, by doing that. So can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought up the giving the permission. And I mentioned the word grace earlier in our conversation. I think that those are two components to renegotiating with yourself. I think it's important to allow yourself to have the space to do it differently, or to take a little bit longer. Again, you want to look at what is the end goal here, right? What is the end goal? And it can be a slippery slope, right? If you're letting yourself off the hook, because that's a really great question you can ask yourself. Is, am I letting myself off the hook? Is it harder than I thought it was going to be? So now it's going to take a little bit more time. Is this something I have to do on my own, or can I get support? Can I give part of this project, this commitment, to somebody else to do for me? I know we talk a lot about that, right?
Yeah.
And a really important factor, especially if you're renegotiating with yourself, is to have a really great accountability partner who can ask you those same questions. Because for me, if something's too hard, or I just like don't feel like doing it, I am the queen of letting myself off the hook. I could find a gazillion excuses to validate, right, why I don't need to meet that deadline, right? But having a really good accountability partner like your group you're talking about, so you get to provide that for the people who are in your group, it's a really great place to check in, right? You know, I need to move this, I need to change this. Give me your thoughts on it. This is what I think, this is what I'm thinking I want to do, you know, support me there. I think it's really important. And it doesn't mean that we're failing. I think we're even more successful when we can be honest and say, okay, so this sounded great at the time. I don't know how we're entrepreneurs, right? Like how many things sounded great at the time and just didn't work out. Like, and to give yourself the permission to say, oh, yeah, thought that was a good idea, but didn't turn out that way, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, permission is really important, really important.
It truly is. And again, if you are a high achiever and you're not hitting a goal, it means that you need to renegotiate that goal. But I'm with you. If there's something that I'm dreading or want, you know, to avoid, I will come up with a justification to make that happen. So yeah, that happens. But the opposite is also, I mean, again, this is what we talked about before. Other people have demands on your time, or there's a delay in getting supplies, or there's a, you know, there's something that's outside your control. Sometimes when that happens, it doesn't matter how hard you work, or it doesn't matter how on top of it you are, it still is going to involve a delay. You know, I mean, you cannot make up for all the issues that happened previously. Right. So you're 110% right, as always. You know?
Oh my gosh, thank you, Kelly.
Yeah. So I love that. When you're looking to renegotiate, do you have any tips on how to, if you needed to renegotiate something with me, is there a way that you recommend that you get that practice in, or that you open the conversation?
Well, ideally, I would set an appointment. You know, I would communicate with you and let you know that there's an issue with an agreement that we have, and I want to set up some time to renegotiate. And I would also say, I have a couple of ideas about how we can best resolve that. When do you have time to talk about that? Right? Because that's part of the negotiation piece as well. It could be the deadline's really close and now you don't have time on your calendar. So how do we like fix that? Right? And so I really love that you pointed out earlier too, about if you see things going sideways, let's talk about that now. Earlier is better, because it could be you could correct and everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. So I would just, again, my tips are have at least 2 solutions in your back pocket when you come into the conversation. Be really clear about what didn't work. No excuses, no reasons, no blaming, no shaming. Eliminate those aspects of that, because that's really about taking the responsibility. It's about being accountable. Stuff happens, stuff that you don't have control over. As you pointed out, Kelly, there's a lot of things going on. And especially if you've got a big project or you've got a large team that you're working with. Right. And so again, sorry, I got off track. Have at least 2 solutions. Make the call as early as possible. Set up time on the calendar. Make sure that you're leaving adequate time. Do you need 15 minutes for that conversation? Do you need 60 minutes for that conversation? So make sure that that's the priority so that you can get everything lined up. Make sure that you have everybody involved in the renegotiation in a conversation at some point in time. So everybody's in the loop. I think that's really important too, is to keep everybody else informed.
All of that sounds absolutely perfect. Now, I have another question for you. For people, you have your Authentic Friendships group, you do individual coaching, I believe,
I
and
do.
group programs. How do people get in touch with you and find out if there's something that you have that's right for them, including the co-working opportunity?
Sure. So you can go to my website, which is on the screen right here. It's debbieternes.com. Made my website so people can find me really easy. And I have programs and events. I have some workshops going on. I have in the office together time. I have a confidence building workshop called I Want More Confidence with Ease. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. The dates, the times are on my website. You can find me on Facebook, and you can also contact me through my website.
Well, that sounds like that will work. Thank you. Do you have any last minute things that you want to share before we wrap this up?
Our Authentic Friendships group on Facebook. It's a wonderful group of women who are, want to interact and want to connect. And I find that that's really inspiring, and it's really fun. We have lots of free events for that as well. So, that's the fun thing that I get to do in my work.
Yeah, I love that group. And I also will say there are always very insightful and inspiring questions, and a few fun questions too. But it gets people talking and interacting, and and you get some real insight. So yeah, definitely, if you can join Authentic Friendships on Facebook, do that. That would be great for you. I think you'd really enjoy it. Great. Well, thank you so much, Debbie, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. As always, you come with just so many nuggets of great things, brilliance, and we will be talking to you soon.
Great. Thank you, Kelly.